Hey everybody, hope you're doing well and living a purpose and meaningful life. You know, in my travels, I often think and reflect on what it is I like to talk about in my videos and some things that are important to me. And I usually take time to pray and to reflect on some things. It may be things that I'm working on or processing or stuff that I'm learning in my schooling and doing some of my counseling things that I've learned in school to prepare me for when it is I go out and start counseling. So one of the things that even before I started doing counseling or taking my school for counseling, I thought a lot about in my own life, and that's how we communicate, you know, and how we do self-talk and how we express and experience our feelings. Because not only people with addictions, but a lot of people, they're just, you know, struggling with depression or they're just having a hard time in life. They struggle with these things. I know I did when I first started my journey and realizing that I had an alcohol problem. I can remember, as I've shared before, at a very early age, I didn't want to talk about things that went on at home. I didn't want to feel anything, so I just basically drowned it with the alcohol. So throughout my life, till I realized I had a problem, that's what I did. And some of it was that I felt that I wasn't allowed to express my feelings, because when I tried to do that as a child, I would just get, shut your mouth or suck it up, or if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. And so I learned to just stuff it. So when I realized that I had a problem, I'd been working on myself for a long time. Ever since I was a kid, I was in counseling, trying to deal with all this stuff, the anger issues and all kinds of things. But I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know how to experience those feelings. And the way I was feeling, I didn't know if it was normal or if it was okay to feel that way and what I was supposed to do with it. So I didn't know how to communicate that and express it. So I just went through my everyday life beating myself up and telling myself that I was useless and no good. And then I would just isolate myself. And sometimes the only time I talked about these things is when I was drunker than a skunk. Because that was the only time that I wasn't afraid. Because, of course I used to call it my courage. So I had to learn to process those things. And those are some of the things that I'm learning now in how to be, effective counselor, and learning how to process our thinking, the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about somebody that we're counseling, or just somebody that we meet every day. How do we respond to them? How do we look and process those feelings that we're dealing with? Some of those feelings, maybe we ask the question, why am I feeling this way? But you don't know how to answer it. Or for instance, you are talking to somebody and something they said triggered something, and you start getting sad, or you get angry, or you just want to go and have a drink or do some drugs, or you just want to go isolate yourself. So I had to learn to recognize those things. And first of all, for me, and I say this to a lot of people, acknowledge what it is. If you can understand what somebody said or did that makes you sad, or it hurts you, or you start crying, then you need to write it down and go talk to somebody about it. See, when we realize as addicts and alcoholics that, number one, that our life is totally a mess, and that we need to turn it over to the care of God as our own understanding. That's the first step. I had to look in the mirror and say, hi, I'm Randy, I'm an alcoholic, and I want to live. So I had to ask myself, what does want to live look like? Have you ever thought, sometimes when you're alone or whatever, what would my life look like if I grew up in a normal, functional family? Or what would my life look like if I wasn't abused as a child? How would I respond? How would I feel? How do I want to feel? So when you look at those things, and I had to look at those things in my own life, okay, how do I want to be treated? What makes me feel good? So as you're going along your journey and you find out these things and you deal with those feelings and you don't isolate yourself, and you take time to reflect, and you write, you do a journal, you write these things down, and you go talk to somebody about it. And you don't just give up and say nobody understands or they don't care. See, those are the kind of things that I did. And then I just isolated myself and I just stuffed it and I never talked about it. And I had to learn those are the unhealthy things. So what am I going to do to change that? How am I going to make this a healthy process where I move forward, not backwards? How am I going to relate those feelings to my parents? How am I going to relate those feelings to my boss in a healthy, productive way? Or my friend? Or whoever it is that you come across within your daily life that does something that hurts you? Are you allowed to stick up for yourself? I didn't think I was allowed to. I thought that I just had to suck it up and just deal with it and not stick up for myself. So I learned over the years that when somebody says something, it's okay for me to go and say to them, hey, John, or hey, Mary, what you just did or what you just said really upset me and hurt me. I would appreciate it in the future that you don't say or do those things in front of me. And that's okay. See, these are the kind of things that we got to do. I've been so involved with a lot of people that don't reach out. They don't say anything. And they, like I shared in one of my videos, they suffer in silence. And I'll say to them, is it working? Has it worked for you for the last 20 years? And if the answer is no, how can you change that? What are some things that you need to do and want to do to change that? So you ask yourself these questions and you go find the answers. What would I do in a situation like that? I would reach out. When my brother died, it devastated me because he didn't want to talk to me. He didn't want anything to do with me. And I loved my brother. He was my best friend. And that was hard for me to process. I couldn't understand. So I sat in the parking lot of a pub for hours, contemplating whether I was going to go in and just mess up all the years I worked hard to stay sober. So the old me would have went in there, but the new me picked up my cell phone and I called a friend and I cried for hours and talked to him. And at the end of the day, I felt better. Now, if I would have went into that beer parlor and drank, I would have thrown everything that I worked hard for away. Not saying that I couldn't start over and keep fighting. Yeah, I could do that. But in my case, is it worth risking my life, my family, my business, everything I worked hard for, just for a drink? Because I know if I go back there, I will die. I will drink myself to death. So every day I'm faced with certain scenarios and situations. Because I have to learn how to handle them properly. Do I get angry when people treat me with disrespect? Yeah. So I have to ask myself and do that self-talk. How do I handle it? How would I handle it before? How am I going to handle it now? So the normal reaction for most people is we're just going to lash out, hurt them like they hurt us. But that's not the answer. How can we respond to people in a loving way, the way that we would want somebody to respond to us? Yes, we can share with them and give them a teaching moment where we can say, okay, this wasn't appropriate that you did this. It would have been a better way if we would have taken the time to talk about it. And we could express our feelings and come to an understanding and the conclusion how we're going to handle this problem. But most of us don't do that. We either just give up, say, I'm going to go have a drink, or I'm going to smoke a joint, or I'm going to go do a line of coke, or whatever it is, or I'm going to go eat, or I'm not going to eat. And we have to realize the only ones we are hurting is ourselves. And if we have kids, we're hurting our kids. Or we're hurting our brother or our sister or our friends. We're hurting nobody else but ourselves. So how do we handle these things? And people, it's a lifelong journey. And it's fun. I'm in my 60s and I'm still learning stuff. I mean, there are scenarios and things that I'm going through now that's preparing me for when I get into counseling. And that's a good thing. I'm learning to self-talk, and I'm learning how to think and process certain situations that I'm involved with people, and learning how to handle it and communicate in the right loving way. Before I speak, I process and I talk to myself, whatever, self-talk, and say, how am I going to handle this? Their beliefs, their morals, whatever, their lifestyle may be different than mine. I may not agree with it, but I still have to love them. And I got to show them God's grace and His mercy like He showed me. So isolating ourselves is not going to work. Going out and using isn't going to work. That's not going to solve the problem. Or doing some other things that we do in our everyday life, whether we have a drug or alcohol problem, most of the thinking is the same. We just got to learn how to process it, experience it. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. I'm watching a show, and it's a Hallmark show, and it's about a mother and son, and they're communicating, and they're responding to each other, and the affection that the mother has for the son. You know, even to this day, and it's okay. It's okay. I don't let it dictate or control my life, but I'm aware of it and I allow it to happen. I cry because I miss my mom, and I didn't get that love and affection and that understanding, that unconditional love from my mother. And has it affected my life? Yes. But I recognize it, and I don't allow it to control me, and I talk about it, and I allow myself to feel and experience those things. And there's nothing wrong with that. I allow myself to cry, whereas I never used to do that. I allow myself to cry when I drive by a place where my brother and I used to have coffee. And I say to myself, man, I miss him. And you know, even right now, talking about it, it makes me emotional. And I'll probably feel this way for the rest of my life. And it's okay, because it probably will never go away till the day I go to glory and see him again. But that's okay. But I allow myself to feel. I allow myself to cry. Because it's healthy. It's not good to stuff it. You know, there are times when I shut it down and I shouldn't. There are times when you may shut it down and just go and lock yourself in your house and don't answer anybody's texts or their phone calls, and they're wondering how you're doing because they love you. So we have to learn some of these things. We have to learn that, how would you feel if somebody did that to you? Somebody that you loved ignored you. Your daughter, your son, when all you were trying to do was reach out to make sure they're okay, and they ignored you. They didn't call you back for weeks. They didn't let you know that you're okay and you're still alive if you've got an addiction problem. How would you feel? So, you know, these are the kind of things we got to ask ourselves. How would you respond to your son if he came to you and he said, Dad, I have some depression issues, or Dad, I have an addiction issue? How would you respond to him? Sometimes we got to think of these things as parents when we're going through them. How do you want to handle these things so that your kids can look at you and say, okay, this is how my dad handled it. He handled it in a healthy, normal, productive way. He never gave up. He never lied down and just said, I can't do this. He recognized that he has an urge to drink or use, and he went and picked up the phone and talked to somebody. He reached out. Because our kids aren't naive. They're not, I don't like this word, stupid. They see how us as parents respond. And they imitate that. And they take it to heart. And it becomes a way of life for them, because my dad did it, so therefore it must be normal. Or it must be healthy. When, and sometimes in those situations, it's not. See, I didn't want my kids going through what I went through. So that was the biggest motivating factor in my life, and the fact that I didn't want to die was I didn't want my kids to see me that way. I didn't want my kids growing up like I did. I wanted my kids to handle things in a healthy, normal, productive way, and I wasn't doing that. You know, people say that you got to do it for you. I understand that. And I did do it for me. But I did it for my kids too. Because I love my kids with all my heart. I love my nephew. I love my nieces. I don't want them not to have an uncle. I wanted to be an example, and I still want to be an example. Am I perfect? No. I make mistakes. Sometimes I get frustrated and I don't respond in the way I should. And I try to always make a point of apologizing. But if we think life is terrible and it's never going to change, it's not going to change. Unless we turn the record over and change our attitude and the way we look at ourselves. And try to look at ourselves in a positive way. And if we don't, find out. Life's a journey. I'm learning things about myself at my age that I wish I could have learned earlier, but that's okay. So that's why I do what I do. So I can help people give the wisdom that God has given me and share that with you guys. Because if something isn't working, like I've shared many times, we need to change it. So you take baby steps. You know, you send a text, I'm okay, and that's all you got to say. And then you got to realize that I got to do more than that. That is just the beginning of your journey. The beginning of our journey is to recognize those things, those areas in our life that become problems and become negative, not positive, and speak them and acknowledge what they are. Say them. Do some self-talk. Talk to yourself. Say, this is what I need to change. I did not handle this, or I'm not handling my life the way I want to handle it. Now, what can I do? And you come up with a plan. You know, do I go for counseling, or do I talk to my pastor, or do I talk to my friends? What do I do to make a difference? And I can't stress more, people. Isolating yourself and not answering people's phone calls or texts is not the answer. Because all you do is slowly die even more. Physically, mentally, spiritually. It doesn't help you. So when I get like that, I say, okay, Randy, get your crap together here. This is what you need to do. And I still go for counseling. I went for counseling the other day. Sometimes we need a tune-up. We need to get focused again in what our purpose and our meaning and our goals are in life. So I go and I talk. And sometimes I ramble on. If that's what works for me, that's what works for me. And my counselor just listens and gives some suggestions. And then most of the time I just have things written down or in my head that I want to talk about, problem areas that I'm having a hard time dealing with and I'm not handling them the right way. Those are the kind of things that I do. I never want to say or do anything that's hurtful to a person, because that's not my intentions. I was sharing with a young fellow the other day, all I want to do is to do whatever I can to help them, but I also got to set some boundaries for myself, protect myself. All I want for them is to succeed. And what does that look like? They have to find out themselves what that looks like. I can just help them along and make suggestions or say, okay, here's a scenario. This is how you and I could have handled it different and got the result that we both wanted. But I have to be patient and understand that people aren't in the same space as I am, same journey as I am right now. They may be ahead of me or they may be behind me. I just have to be loving and patient and realize before I speak, I pray about it. That every word that I say is going to lift them up and it's going to help them, not tear them down. So please, people, just think about those things. It's important to process all these things and allow yourself to feel. It's okay to feel. It's okay to cry. And then reach out if you know why you were crying and it's a problem area in your life. Go talk to somebody. Pick up the phone, call your friend, or go for counseling. I know everything costs money, and it's not easy these days. Or send me a message on my thing on YouTube, and I will be glad to talk to you, or send you a WhatsApp or whatever where we can communicate and I can try to do whatever I can to help you. I'd be more than happy to do that. Or if you live in the same town as me, phone me or we'll get together for coffee. Or just if you know what areas of your life you need help, then send me a message and I will do whatever I can to get you that help. So always remember, be good to yourself. You are good. You're not garbage. And when God created you, He said it was good. So go out and find out why He said it was good. That you're fearfully and wonderfully made. You were created in God's image. Wow, when I took that from here to my heart, oh man, there's nothing stopping me now except for myself. So go out and find those things. Go out and learn how to love yourself. The only way we're going to learn is being around other hurting people. And listen to their story and say, wow, I thought I was the only one. No, you're not the only one. There's thousands of people. And learn from them. Talk about it. Talk about your experiences. Talk about your feelings. That's the only way we're going to learn. Isolating ourselves isn't yet. Or go out and help somebody. Then you kind of get out of that little box that you're in, that you're stuck in. And it makes you feel good that you're not concentrating on yourself all the time, but you're going out and helping others. It helps you to grow. It gives you wisdom. It gives you insight in how other people handle their problems. So yeah, just find these things out because it'll make you feel better mentally, physically, spiritually. And I'm still learning those things in my life. But that's okay. I just have to learn how to handle things differently. One thing for me is I have a business. It's very stressful. And people sometimes don't show up. And I'm getting to the age where I'm hurt and I can't do too much anymore. So it's very frustrating for me because I'm not used to that. I got a blown bicep muscle. I got a hernia here that I got to get operated. So I'm going to be out of commission. My whole life I ran, I worked out. I've always taken care of myself. So now I got to find other ways to do that. So I go for walks. I go to the pool and I do, exercise in the pool. I can't swim too much because of my arm. I go spend time with my little sister, and we walk and we talk. So I'm learning as I go along too. I gotta learn to allow things not to get to me and realize that I just gotta turn it over to the care of God. Just do everything I can, and that's all I can do. And allow people to make their own mistakes and not take it personally. So those are the things I'm learning about myself. And it's preparing me for my next chapter in my life. Because if I don't do that, it affects my health. I don't sleep properly. I get anxious, things like that. So I have to learn to deal with those things. But that's okay. I could just ignore them and not do anything. But I don't do that because that's not healthy. I try to find ways to learn how to relax. I try to find ways to express myself without getting angry. So, regardless of whether you're going into a profession as a psychologist or counselor, we've always got things we got to work on. As long as we're aware of those things and we don't allow them to get in our way when we're dealing with people, just people in general. That we respond in a kind and loving way, and that they know that we care. That's all that matters to me. But if there's a teaching moment where I think that I could share some wisdom, I share it in love. And that's all that it's about, people. That's why I do these videos. Because what I'm saying to you, I make sure that I apply it in my own life. Otherwise, what right do I have to say anything? What right do I have to tell people not to use or drink if I'm still doing it? And I'm lying to myself and everybody else. So I got to make sure all those things are in place. Are they going to happen all at once? No. But I'm aware of them, and I know what they are, and I write them down, and I work on them. And that's all we can do. So, until we meet again, God bless you. May you feel God's loving arms and His presence around you today. In Jesus' name, amen.